r/AskReddit. What is the dumbest reason you have ever gotten in trouble at school? The library insisted I stole a Dr. Seuss book and couldn't prove I did it. They kept trying to convince me I did it, and I wouldn't give in. Like they'd literally sit me down and say, just admit you did it, that's it. You won't have to pay the fee if you just admit it. They eventually gave up, and the principal said, just do you know, I'm paying this $12 out of my own pocket. I'm disappointed that you won't own up to what you did. Edit. Some people are asking if I really did steal it. No, I didn't. I had never even heard of the book until they said I took it. It was "Oh, the places you'll go." My 8th grade English teacher hated me. I had to be out of school for a couple weeks in the first semester after another student threw a pencil across the art room and it stuck in my eye. Between frequent doctor visits, eye patches, and everything else, the doctor recommended I stay home until I didn't need the eye patch anymore. My sister collected all my homework for me every day, and everything was turned in on a regular basis. I was just not at school. Because of this, the English teacher decided I should have to fail and redo 8th grade. She marked every assignment as not handed in. However, she returned them all with grades marked on them. Didn't know she marked everything as not turned in until report cards came out. My mom ended up getting the principal and guidance counselors involved, and I finally received all the grades marked on my work. The entire time she tried to justify her actions by saying, since I wasn't in class I didn't deserve to pass. She was gone the next year. Middle of winter, I put my coat under my desk before class started. Teacher insists that the coat I'm not even wearing is out of dress code despite it being one of the school approved colors. He demands I give him my coat until the end of the day. I tell him no, because I don't think he'll actually give it back, plus I have to walk outside to get to other classes. He sends me to the principal's office. I tell the secretary what happened. She rolls her eyes and writes me a pass back to class. I got in trouble for being in a fight that I didn't fight back in once. I came to the conclusion very quick that if there isn't a difference, that I might as well fight. I slung someone through the trophy case in the main hall. They asked me why I did it, and I told them why. He hit me, and I punched him, grabbed him and slung him by his backpack as hard as I could into the trophy case, and told them that last time I got suspended for not hitting back, and refused to be bullied. They couldn't really say anything back and just gave me the same punishment. Back then teachers weren't allowed to intervene and had to call the resource officer also, so teachers would literally stand back and watch fights in order to not lose their jobs. It's all quite bullshit and I don't think schools have changed much since then. My kids will to boxing or MMA lessons long before they start high school. I had a substitute teacher in Spanish. We had a test that day. Our teacher left a note for the sub saying we could play games and shit when we were done with the test. So I finish the test, pull out my computer, and start playing some dumb app I can't remember. Everyone else is also playing games and surfing the web. The teacher goes up to me, fucking slams my computer lid down on my hand, screams at me to get off my computer, and walks away, ignoring everyone else doing the same shit. Then she stops and says, "Wait, are you guys allowed to play games?" Everyone says yes, and she looks at me with this oh shit look in her eye. My dad died, and I was severely depressed. We moved to a new town and school and I carried around a poetry book to constantly doodle or write in, to keep my mind from dragging me places. Second week of school and the bill hasn't rung yet and everyone seated talking or eating, against rules in homeroom. Teacher walks in, immediately swipes it off my desk, and says without argument I will not be getting it back. As a book had started writing with my dad, and continued to write in the last 6 months. It was very full, and had all my poems my dad wrote too. I was devastated. I waited until the class was over, and I approached her desk, nearly crying, and said that book is impossibly important to me. I never have it out after class starts, and straight up said it's how I handle my grief. She looked me dead in the eye and said life moves on, and if you wanted to keep your diary you should not have brought it to school. I walked out of class, called my mom and she came in, bastardized her in front of the principal for picking on an own grieving teenager, and demanded my book back. The teacher refused to have me in her class and I actually switched to a smaller, quieter school that catered to students who couldn't always come to class in regular hours. The new school was awesome. You signed a mock contract stating you take your education seriously and will make time to be there, and then you make your own hours. The school was open from 6 AM to 9 PM and had 3 teachers and everything was done online. There was maybe 60 students in total, and only ever maybe 4 to 10 in a classroom, and the teachers made pancakes and bacon and eggs every day, and had sandwiches and granola bars and stuff out for lunches. There was a coffee station in every class, and they had holiday dinners. Best part, there was a pet board, so if you wanted to bring your cat or dogs to school you scheduled them as study buddies, so the days you had marked no one else brought their pet. We always had dogs and cats in class. So at my elementary school, they would always write the homework due the next day on the chalkboard and it'd be left there the whole day. I was someone who usually finished class activities pretty quickly, so I would always start the homework whenever I had finished class walk early and had nothing else to do. And anytime I was caught, I'd get yelled at for it. One time I was threatened with detention for it. I still don't get it to this day. I never did the homework while the teacher was talking. I never copied someone else's homework. I wasn't disturbing the class in any way. What was the issue? I had a teacher try to force my bully and I to be friends. This led to 2 years of me not being able to get away from this mean, manipulative little asshole and my stupid teacher patting herself on the back for making us play nice. If I tried to get away or tell her I didn't want to be her friend, she, the kid, made my life miserable, so I was stuck with her. My options were be in this unwanted relationship with someone who uses me as a punching bag, or try to get out of this unwanted relationship with someone who is already mean to me and watch her really ramp up the bullying. Meanwhile, the teacher assumed she had fixed the problem when she'd pretty much just given herself permission to ignore it. Because nothing makes things better like tethering someone to their bully. My friend told me at one point that she was moving and she was pretty upset about it, but all I could feel was relief. Fuck you, Rebecca. I was your only friend because you were too awful of a person to make your own. And fuck my teacher for assuming she could force us into being best buddies. In 5th grade, the teacher kept calling on me to read out loud because I was the fastest in the class. I hated being the center of attention in any way. I was really shy at that point and most of the other kids made fun of me at one point or another. Another kid would read a couple sentences. She would call me to read a paragraph. She was trying to get through a whole chapter of a textbook or something, and eventually I just said no. She sent me to the office. They told me to just hang out there until the class is switched. French teacher insulted me by saying you played the piano well, but I think the country singer was better and should have won the talent show, not you. Later in the week we had to write a page on why we enjoyed her class. I wrote out how much I loved being able to chat with friends because her hearing and eyesight were so bad, she couldn't tell anything was going on half the time. She gave me a few days of detention and was ultimately instructed to apologize to her by the school's disciplinarian. When I did and expressed the reasoning behind my rant, pissed off that I was insulted in front of the entire class, she wanted to hug it out. No thanks. I was a goth girl in high school, and Columbine happened at the end of my senior year. There was about 5 weeks of school left at that point. I had worn dog collars or dog choke chains daily for 3 years, and then all of a sudden the school cracked down hard on us weirdos/outcasts. I was told to not wear the collars or choke chains anymore, but I thought, fuck this, and wore them anyway. I was told several times to stop and threatened with detention or a suspension, but I had a hardcore case of senioritis and I didn't give a fuck. I was a good student otherwise, and I had a hunch they wouldn't follow through, so I called their bluff. I was correct, and they eventually left me alone. I had a friend in 9th grade that was an outcast type. I was too, but him more so. The school resource officer swore up and down one day that he had heard him say pipe bomb from across the gym. He didn't, but no one could convince him otherwise. The resource officer then wouldn't leave him alone, and every time he saw my friend would take time to tell him that he knows he's planning to blow the school up because everyone hated him, that he was a piece of garbage. This happened so often that my friend would be in tears. Seems like the exact opposite of what you'd want to do if you think someone is planning something. I think it's because people get the info that outcasts and people who are bullied are the ones that shoot up schools, instead of thinking maybe we should fight bullying and find a way to make them feel less like an outcast. They instead use it as an excuse to treat them even worse. The funny thing is, the closest we had to a school shooting is when popular football players brought guns to school planning on shooting people because of a fight. They didn't, luckily. After lunch every day, 2 people in my year level were assigned to go around, collect all of the outdoor bins, and lock them away in the bin enclosure. Well, my friend thought it would be funny to lock me inside as I was putting the last bin away and go back to class. They tried to come back almost right away, but the teacher wouldn't let them. I was found by the teacher an hour later when school let out, and she let me out and told me I had detention for skipping class. Fun. In 3rd grade, my hand cramped while I was writing. Very acute. Very painful. Never felt anything quite like it before or since. I let loose a quick yelp of pain. Well, the teacher then broke away from talking to yell at me in front of the whole class and take away my recess. She came around after class when I explained that my hand had suddenly hurt, but who punishes a child for what was obviously an involuntary response? Frick that school and that teacher in particular for that, and a variety of other reasons, man. Played saxophone in 8th grade. Taking apart a saxophone is a pain in the ass and takes forever. Along with that, I was trying to talk to my then GF who had classes on a different floor. When I get to my next class, the bell rings as soon as I and some other kids walk through the door. However, this teacher decided she'd start taking roll before the bell rung. Since my last name starts with a C, I was close to the top. Mr. C, if you're late one more time I'm gonna give you detention. I was the only one that got yelled because none of the other kids' names had been called. I sharpened a pencil. Don't get me wrong. This was in a class which I didn't really focus or dedicate myself and constantly got into trouble in any way. However, the one day I decided to actually do the work, I asked the teacher for a sharpener and she said she didn't have one, but she'd go to her office and get one for me. In the time it took her to get one, my friend offered me this, so I sharpened my pencil with that. The teacher came back and told me to sit down, to which I replied, I'm sharpening my pencil though, and she thought I was being rude and sent me out of the class. Older kids in high school beat me up for being a freshman. Didn't fight back, curled up and protected my vital areas until security came. School had a zero tolerance policy, so I was suspended for a week along with getting a referral, a demerit, for being involved in a fight, even though the security cameras just showed 5 guys trying to beat the crap out of me. My parents told me with bullshit rules like that they didn't care if I fought back. If it happened again, my life is more important, and to put my wrestling skills to use. Bullies decide to try beating me up again about a month-ish later. After taking a couple punches I broke one guy's nose and suplexed another into the concrete. Suplex victim starts convulsing, and the others run off. Security comes. Police and ambulance arrive later to take the 2 guys to the hospital. I received a 2-week suspension and was barred from all wrestling team activities for the rest of the year. On the plus side, didn't have any bully trouble for the rest of high school and became wrestling captain my junior year. Screw early/mid 2000s zero tolerance school policies. I know I could have killed the dude I suplexed, but I honestly don't feel any pity. Actions have consequences. Just because somebody's a stupid kid, it doesn't excuse them for shitty behavior like gang jumping random individuals. I had to tell a lot of stupid people that the bullies could have just as easily killed me or left me with brain damage with 5 people kicking and stomping my head. I had to tell a lot of stupid people that the bullies could have just as easily killed me or left me with brain damage with 5 people kicking and stomping my head. Yes, I've had to explain something similar to people for years. There was this dude who bullied the fuck out of me in high school. He was tall and fat, so he had a considerable amount of weight. I'm average height, at the time 5'7" I believe, and super skinny. I was actually severely underweight due to depression. He liked to do this thing where he'd push or punch me to the ground and just sit on me while I suffocated and potentially break a few ribs. This happened a few times and every time I was fighting for my life. I never really complained to a teacher about it. They probably cold helped because I was going through depression and basically hated myself and thought I deserved it. At some point I got so mad that when he came to push me, I caught my balance, picked up the metal rod that had come off of the chair nearby earlier that day and just whacked the shit out of him. I wasn't particularly strong, but I was stronger than I looked, and I bloodied him bad enough that he had to go to the hospital to get patched up and was away from school for half a month. People, both teachers and students, mostly his friends, kept asking me what I would have done if I'd killed him. Every time I would say that he's been close to killing me over 30 times but no one cared about me. The good thing about it was that he actually ended up being a decent friend. We still sometimes go out to have a drink now and then and watch football, and it seems like around that time was when my depression subsided, so it definitely helped for me to stand up for myself for once. 7 of us wanted to go to a maths revision class. They didn't have the guts to ask the teacher, so I did it. I wasn't exactly confident. I just wanted shit to be over and done with. All I said to the teacher was, "Our maths exam is in 2 days. Is it okay if we go to a revision class?" I got a good verbal ass whooping in return, during which she called me one of her laziest students. She ended it by saying, "Go on, get out of my face. I can't stand the sight of you." The sad part was that, while I wasn't the most intelligent in the class, I definitely wasn't the lowest of the low. For instance, those who came to class drunk. I was above average and just below the most intelligent in the class. And I made serious fucking effort. I never knew why this teacher hated me so much. I posted this on a similar thread a couple of months ago, but I'll copy paste it here. In middle school, we were doing a unit on the digestive tract. The science teacher wanted each student to decorate a wooden spoon, which she would put into cup and use for random call. Most students drew the digestive tract on the handle and made the head of the spoon into a smiley face. I followed suit, only I drew a frown. I figured it was a little strange to draw a happy face on a spoon with all its organs showing. I was later called into the office. As a generally well-behaved student, I couldn't figure out what I could have possibly done wrong. The receptionist told me the new principal just wanted to get to know the students. So I entered the principal's room, and she asks me about my summer, etc. So far it seemed as though she really was simply interested in getting to know me. Then she pulls out my spoon from science class. She wants me to explain why it has a frowny face. As it turns out, the science teacher thought this was a definitive sign that I was depressed and suicidal. I assured her that this was not the case, and I went back to class. When I told my parents about it, they laughed at what a ridiculous overreaction the whole thing was. A guy grabbed my notebook in the hallway and would not give it back as I chased him around for it, and class had already started. He then ran into the boys' restroom with it, and I slung open the door in frustration, about to go in and get my stolen belongings back, but I hesitated outside the door because I didn't want to risk getting in trouble for going in. So I just quickly closed it and decided I would go to the office and let them handle it. Unfortunately, as soon as I closed the door to do that, the intercom came on immediately with the principal calling me to the office. I got in trouble for the terrible offense of opening the boys' bathroom door. He had witnessed the whole scene on the hall cameras, but did not call the asshole over the intercom. He sat and watched until I opened the door, and that was his problem. I tried explaining it, but he just said he didn't care. I had no business opening the boys' bathroom door. It was a small town school that worshipped football. The football players and cheerleaders got preferential treatment. The taunting, disruptive troublemaking notebook stealer was a football player. 2 kids in my class were fighting each other outside, so I thought it would be a good idea to step in. Unfortunately for me, I didn't really say anything before I got between them and got a clean punch to the jaw. They both stopped and asked why I stepped in and if I was okay, but a teacher saw us and thought that since I got punched I was the perp. So I get sent to the principal's office and explain what happened. She tells me she believes me, but that the teacher outside thought I was the one starting the fight. Some other kid in my class was recording standard behavior from him, I assure you, and sent me the video so I could prove I was innocent. All's well that ends well, but that's the last time I step in between people fighting in the public school system. My mom worked in a doctor's office back when drug reps were allowed to bring all kinds of office supplies and the like into them, and as such I had a few thousand pens, sticky notes, highlighters etc. I started selling them out of my bag and my locker, for nothing mind you, $0.25 pen, $0.50 marker etc. to other kids. They sold like nuts. Remember how there were like 3 to 4 kids who never had pencils or pens in class and asked around. Anyway, by the time the admins caught on it was like 3/4 of the way through the year, and it turned into this whole bullshit investigation. Words like drug paraphernalia, yeah we are out here getting ripped on Claritin bruh, and illegal distribution were thrown around. Eventually they asked how much money I had made, and I told them about $35. My mom had to pay for it out of pocket, not that any of that money went back to the kids who bought pens from me. So idiotic. On the car ride home, she goes, "So how much money did you actually make this year?" $540. Don't get caught next time. The next year it was in the rulebook that any pen/supplies sporting drug logos were to be confiscated and the owner punished. Bastards were jealous their capitalism game was weaker than the weird hot topic kids LMAO. This story reminds me of something. So back in high school all the school counselor would pretty much rotate in fundraising where the members would carry around these boxes of assorted candy bars and sell them for like $1 each or something. Nobody ever asked or cared what club they were supporting, they just wanted some chocolate during class, and at the time my parents had a Sam's Club membership and they happened to sell the exact same boxes of assorted candy bars that everyone would carry around. They were red with a handle attached. I convinced my parents to invest in my startup and would just carry it around and sell for the same price as everyone else. I also had an Italian teacher this year. We believed her true calling was to be a police officer. I mean that literally. She even once pulled out a little pen light to check my pupil dilation because I found a joke particularly funny and laughed twice as long as everyone else. Anyway, she started giving me the third degree on what club I was selling for because the other clubs happened to be in selling off season and no one was carrying their boxes anymore, but I still had mine. I told her it was for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I felt like I was not really lying because I wished I had an iPod. They were new at the time and I didn't have one. Eventually got the iPod, but stopped selling those things because the margins were too low and I always had to eat the cost of the plain Hershey bars. In elementary school PE class, our gym teacher brought out the parachute. She told everyone to grab a piece of the edge and stand in a big circle around it, but nobody go under it or stand on top of it. Then she plopped a folded up parachute in the middle of the gym and walked away. Then the whole class of 25 to 30 kids bum rushed the giant parachute and started dragging it about, trapping like 10 of us under it trying to find an edge. Next thing we know, the teacher started yelling and made the 10 of us sit on the bleachers and watch for the entire fucking class. On fucking parachute day of all days. There was also that time in the computer lab that my friend realized the slice of ham on his sandwich was roughly the same size as a CD tray on the computer. Probably a week went by before anyone had any reason to open the disk drive, but the computers were assigned, so it wasn't difficult to trace it back to us. All we got was a stern talking to by the principal and a warning about vandalizing school property. Obligatory on mobile. Sorry for the formatting. So, in elementary school, I was teased and bullied pretty heavily. One kid in particular made it his personal mission to tease and humiliate me every time he saw me, every day, for over 3 years. My parents were largely unaware, as were the teachers, because I just tanked the damage and put up with it, because I was aware that his home life wasn't great, and I didn't want to make more trouble for him. Also, I didn't want to be known as a tattler or such, and even if I did bring it up to the teachers, he'd just come down harder on me. And yet, one day, it was just enough. It was at PE, middle of the day, and we were about to start our run, and while I don't remember what he said, I whipped around and snarled, "I don't give a fuck about you." He chased me through the whole run, intent on physical revenge for what he took as an insult, and he had to be physically restrained once we reached the end. Since our school had a zero tolerance policy about swearing, I got suspended for that. My parents had to reassure me that it was just policy and I hadn't done anything really wrong. 5th grade, I got thrown out of reading class for reading. My parents were university professors and we didn't have a TV, but we did go to the library at least once a week. By 5th grade, I could zip through an entire week's reading assignment in about 3 or 4 minutes. So one day the teacher gave us an assignment out of the stupid little reader. I read that sucker in no time flat, and then went back to my novel. I was heavily into John le Carre and Robert Ludlum at the time, so probably one of those. The teacher had an absolute meltdown that I wasn't reading the assignment, and couldn't believe that I'd already finished it despite the 600 odd page novel I was actually reading. She threw me out of class after berating me in front of everyone. And that's the moment that cemented in my mind that school was complete bullshit. When I was in 1st grade, they tested our reading level by having us read aloud to the teacher. I was an avid reader even as a Jungan, but horrifically shy, so I didn't do so well with the test. Either way, we had bins of books to choose from based on our level for reading time. Well, in no time flat I'd read every book in the bins for my level and below, so went for a high level book. Soon as I'd grabbed a book that interested me, the teacher shouted at me from across the room not to go above my reading level. Now, this was well over 20 years ago, and again, I was a sensitive child, so maybe she didn't yell, but she was definitely across the room and heads were turned. I just remember putting the book I wanted to read back and grabbing one I'd read before and burying my nose in there to cry in what was probably not nearly as inconspicuous as I'd hoped. In high school, hoity-toity rich kid private school my parents made me go to, there was a very loosely enforced rule that you couldn't carry a beverage in the carpeted hallways in case you spill it, as it was a pain in the ass to clean it up. Technically it applied to everyone, teachers and students alike. However, nobody ever followed this rule. Well, one day, I was meandering my way merrily down the carpeted hall with my coffee cup in hand, because fuck the police, right? I'm looking down at my iPod, not paying any attention. Suddenly, my reverie is interrupted by the familiar shrill yell of the French teacher nobody likes. Hey on _2 much Adderall. What are you doing with that? There are no drinks allowed in this hallway. I look up, ready to issue a whoops, sorry it won't happen again, until I noticed a peculiar fact. She had a cup of coffee. The exact same cup of coffee that I had from the cafeteria, she also had in her hand. I wasn't normally disrespectful to teachers, but first of all, I wasn't even in her class, and the stupidity of the situation began to overcome me. I said. I put my iPod in my pocket, and with my one free hand, I gestured dramatically at her coffee. Her face turned beet red. I see you're enjoying a coffee too on this fine day, I said. Yes, but I'm a teacher, she stammered as she realized her embarrassingly fatal mistake. She trailed off as, I presume, she realized the rule didn't only apply to students, but also to teachers. I raised my eyebrows, took a sip of my coffee, and continued on my merry way. She never yelled at me for anything again. I was also always late to class all throughout middle and high school because I lived with my mom about 2 hours away from the school since we couldn't afford to live nearby, but she wanted me to go to a good school and there was always insane traffic. My middle school didn't care too much, all the teachers just thought I slacked off and was a delinquent that didn't care despite how good my grades were. High school comes around, and they started giving me detention every day after school. I was in track before this had started happening, and was about to make varsity my sophomore year, when my coach comes to me, and tells me, and can't be in track anymore cause I have detention pretty much every day. So I asked the principal if I could just attend Saturday school instead, and he said I now have to attend both for arguing with him, which I didn't even do. So I also couldn't attend Saturday practices, and had to quit track, and lose a potential scholarship as well. This school also kicked me out, and told me I had to go to a continuation school, because I was making his school look bad with my attendance. I fucking hated that school. I stole a keyboard, and was rewarded with an after-school detention. We were having a sort of project exhibition in 10th grade. Essentially we had to create literally anything. Personal project for anyone familiar with the IBO program. Anyway, a friend of mine made a video game in collaboration with yours truly. We had everything set up for the exhibition day, except for a keyboard. With the exhibition starting within minutes, I had the infinite wisdom to run around the campus looking for a keyboard without success, mind you. With time running short and the exhibition already underway, I had to come up with something quick. So my friend and I decided that we needed a temporary solution. So we found the closest empty classroom and unplugged the keyboard from the teacher's desktop. I sent my friend off back to the exhibition to set up whilst I ran to the ed office, who happened to have massive piles of keyboards strewn around. Incredibly messy and dusty office with a literal pile of keyboards. Successfully borrowing a keyboard from the guys in the ed office, I sped back to the exhibition hall and gave my buddy the borrowed keyboard whilst I quickly ran back to the classroom with the teacher's keyboard. Later on that day, I was called in by my mathematics teacher, who informed me that I had an after-school detention for stealing his keyboard. It turned out that on my quest to the IB office, the teacher had returned to his classroom and found his keyboard missing, at which point he went to the resource office and got a new one, only to find his keyboard returned when he returned to his class with another keyboard. I'm not even